In life, we have obstacles. Be it physical or mental, we have things that hold us back. Fear, anxiety, or no self-confidence are just a few of them. Most of us become paralyzed when it comes to taking action, and that's why most people never take action in the first place.
You will take no action at all.
But what if it wasn't as bad as it seems to us? What we are facing seems so simple to solve to other people, but extremely hard from our own view.
All right, that seems easy enough.
We are dissatisfied with our job, our relationships, and our place in the world. We're trying to get somewhere, but something stands in the way, so we do nothing.
What are they gonna do? They won't do anything.
To avoid facing these obstacles, we blame external events, the economy, politicians, other people. Sometimes we write ourselves off as failures, as not good enough, when really only two things are at fault: our attitude and approach. Few people around the world and through history understand that their attitude and approach to a situation would most likely determine the outcome of that event. We watch these people turn seemingly impossible to overcome obstacles into launching pads for themselves. How do they do that? What is their secret, we ask. Even more confusing is seeing a generation before us facing the same or worse obstacles than us and overcoming these obstacles with fewer tools and fewer safety nets. We live in much easier times and yet we are still stuck. What we lack today is a method and a framework to understanding and acting upon the obstacles life throws at us.
So one would think that today it would be easier to find meaning in life, and yet I sense that it's more difficult in a sense today than it was in years past. Do you think that?
You are absolutely right.
Well, why is that?
Because we are living in a society, these types of societies virtually, or at least they are out, virtually to satisfy and gratify each and every human need. Except for one need, the most basic and fundamental need operant in man, the need for meaning.
Better explained in the book The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, 3 steps are defined to overcome obstacles in life. The first is the perception that we have about what happens to us. It is how we see and understand these events. The second is the way we act towards those events. Not any kind of action will do, but directed action. We want to act in the best interest of our goals. It's about creative application and not brute force. And the third and last step is will. Will is our internal power. When a situation seems unchangeable or undeniably negative, we can turn it into a learning experience, a humbling experience, or a chance to provide comfort to others. When action is what we do when we still have some agency over a situation, then will is what we depend on when this agency is gone. Throughout history, this framework has been applied, consciously or subconsciously, by great achievers. Abraham Lincoln, Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison, and many more had an excellent approach and mindset towards challenges, obstacles, and setbacks. As they say, your mindset is everything, or at least it plays a big role in how your life turns out.
Success is a mindset.
In 1855, John D. Rockefeller, son of an alcoholic criminal who had abandoned his family, took his first job at the age of 16. 2 years later, in September 1857, a massive national financial crisis originating from Ohio began. Young Rockefeller could have gotten scared. He could have started panicking, but he didn't. Instead, he kept his head cool and observed the different events happening. He looked at this crisis as an opportunity instead of a disaster.
Oh, this is an opportunity.
He knew from a young age that only the disciplined and rational mind could hope to profit from a crisis. John became the founder of the Standard Oil Company and the first billionaire in the modern period. Because he could resist impulses in favor of cold, hard common sense, he became the man known by everybody today. The perception you have about something is the way you see it, understand and interpret a situation. Our perception about an event is what that event means to us. It's also going to determine how we react to that event. Two identical people with just different perspective about an event will have two different outcomes. Let's say they both are too short for a specific sport. The first might see it as an impossible situation to overcome because he just doesn't have the genetics for it, while guy number 2 can see the opportunity in his height. He might be shorter than his competitors, but he does have some other advantages that guy number 1 didn't think about. Eventually, guy number 1 quits and guy number 2 becomes pretty successful. Both had the same genetics, same problems, but both didn't view this problem the same way, which caused one to be successful and the other one to quit. This is just an example to portray the importance of perception of an event. You have the power to control the way you view that event. Recognize your power. People can deprive us of our possessions, they can label us, throw us in jail, but they'll never control our beliefs, thoughts and reactions. We are never completely powerless. Even in the worst of situations, you can view it as an opportunity. Got thrown in jail even if you didn't deserve it? Good, now you got some time to read all the books you wanted to read. An economic recession is happening, now you understand what actual hard life feels like and you'll appreciate the good times even more. A loved one died. Once you turn the page, you will appreciate people close to you even more now that you realize they are immortal. The view that we have about an event is completely in our power and we should try to make the best of it.
The idea is, instead of just acting on your emotions, instead of just acting out of anger, you step back and you catch yourself and you go through a process. First, you are aware that you don't know where your anger is from. You've made that decision, you understand it. You step back and you go, what is it that I'm really, really angry about? And in the moment that you catch yourself, you stop yourself from doing probably something stupid, saying something that'll get you in trouble. 80% of the mistakes you make in life come from this fact that you do things without being aware. You react emotionally when you could have taken that half step back and thought a little more deeply. So the idea is awareness, self-awareness is the key to everything here.
Astronauts before getting sent into space have to master one major skill, the skill of not panicking. You see, when you are 150 miles above the Earth in a spaceship smaller than a family car, panicking is deadly. It is suicide. Why the importance of that skill? On Earth, it is in most cases not a life or death situation, but it doesn't mean we can start acting emotionally. Just like Rockefeller and our fellow astronauts, we should control our emotions when an obstacle is arising. Rockefeller kept a cool head even in what seemed the worst possible situations. Most people, when they face a setback, an obstacle or a challenge, they panic. Their emotions take over and they act irrationally. They make mistakes, they override systems and ignore rules. They stop thinking clearly and just react. Not how they are supposed to react, but they react to the survival hormones coursing through their veins. Once something goes wrong, people trade a perfect plan for an emotional freakout. That is something we want to avoid at all costs. How the astronauts cultivated the skills of not panicking was by repeating the process over and over again. That way it became as natural and familiar as breathing. Training every variable again and again to remove all uncertainty. These people keep their heart rate low even when they are very far away from the Earth. But when we have to talk to a stranger in the street, some freeze for a moment, some struggle to get the words out of their mouth, and it feels like your heart is going to burst out of your chest. The only way we can make rational decisions is by being in control of our emotions. A certain samurai named Miyamoto Musashi won multiple fights against feared opponents, even though he was swordless. What did he do differently? A simple switch in perception.
Perception is key.
Perception is everything.
Miyamoto used to view the fight objectively. He saw just what was there. In the Book of Five Rings, he explains the distinction between perceiving and observing, which is, the perceiving eye is weak, while the observing eye is strong. The perceiving eye sees distractions, exaggerations, and misperceptions, while the observing eye sees only what is there. If you want to perceive an event differently, start by being objective. When you hear, that thing happened and it's not good, there is an objective and a subjective part. That thing happened is objective and it's not good is subjective. Start by being objective in situations and look at things how they actually are. When we see through our perceptions, which are wrong most of the time,
You're completely wrong.
you just have to see through your emotions. Our primal brain gives us wrong perceptions about events to avoid being hurt. When a deer senses danger, it runs, sometimes right into traffic. We can avoid that impulse and react in the right way, by viewing a situation how it actually is and not how it looks. It's 384 before Christus and the great orator Demosthenes was born. Even though he became what he became, there was little chance he would become it. Born sickly and frail, with a nearly debilitating speech impediment, it wouldn't be an easy journey. At 7, he would lose his father, and the money he inherited, supposed to pay for tutors and the best schools, was stolen by the guardians entrusted to protect him. Here he was, effeminate, awkward, not respected, not understood, but with a desire. One day Demosthenes would witness a man speaking at the court of Athens. That inspired him, and he would start to put in the work. He would lock himself away underground, literally. He dug a hole in which he would study and educate himself. He would practice day and night to master his voice, his facial expressions and arguments. He even shaved off his head so he would be too embarrassed to go outside. Too extreme, you're thinking? Maybe, but with all that action he reached his goals. He finally faced his enemies, which were his guardians, and took back what was taken from him, at least what was left. Most of his inheritance was gone by now, but the money became secondary. He became the great orator at the time and the voice of Athens because of one thing: action. Having the discipline to act is extremely important. Without it, dreams stay dreams and thoughts stay thoughts. Nothing can be created without the discipline to act and do something. It doesn't even matter what you do, as long as you do something and it has something to do with your goal, you're doing more than 99% of the population.
More than anyone else in the world.
Demosthenes could have just accepted his fate. He could have just laid down and said, "Nope, I'm not doing anything because I have a disability." He would have never become the man he became. That's why doing anything really and keeping that going is already good enough. But most of us do nothing. When faced with an obstacle, it's easier to come up with some excuse. But that's not going to solve anything. Hiding, ignoring it, or putting it away will not help. Only with precise and calculated action will we be able to overcome them. That is attacking problems with energy, persistence, coherent and deliberate process, resilience, pragmatism, strategic vision, and an eye for opportunity.
Da Vinci said, the only reason I am so much better is I am more persistent. That's the secret to my success. If I encounter a problem, I won't let go. That was the secret of Einstein. That was the secret of Steve Jobs. So it's this intelligence that you get from not just your knowledge, but also your experience and your practice.
Ulysses Grant, a general during the Second World War, tried to crack the defenses of Vicksburg. For nearly a year he tried everything possible, but nothing seemed to work. After months of trying, he was going to get replaced, but he knew there was a weak spot. He knew there was a way in, so he kept trying. Eventually, he would try something that went against all conventional military theory. He would go past the gun batteries defending the river, and he succeeded. His plan was very bold, but it sent a clear message to his enemies that nothing would stop him and he would never give up. Grant was not the only one with such persistence. Thomas Edison wasn't alone experimenting with incandescent lights, but he was the only one willing to test 6,000 filaments to see which one would work. With this amount of persistence, it is hard not achieving your goals. But what most people seem to do, which I'm a part of, it is to give up and quit after a few attempts. Some might give a few more tries, but in general, people give up pretty quickly. A part of taking action is not only to do it once, but to do it over and over again. It is known in business that the first attempts, the first ideas never really work. Whether it's a lack of experience or just a bad idea, these things never end up being a huge success, without considering the few exceptions. This is the reason why persistence is something that should be practiced frequently. YouTube is another example. You might not make any views for over a year and suddenly blow up with one video. So here's the alternative to common behavior. Like Grant and Edison, our duty is to start practicing persistence, to start believing that what we do, no matter what it is, deserves our full attention and focus. It is refusing to give up no matter how you feel, and if something still doesn't work after giving it everything we got, move on to something else, learn from your past mistakes and don't make them again, and give that new thing all you got again. Eventually, with that kind of persistence, you will succeed in something. It might not be what you plan, but know that it really is. The plan or the process is what coach Nick Saban had in his mind, and every player and assistant knew and lived by it too. What he wanted was not to think of the future, but of the present moment. He wanted players to focus on the next play and not the championships. This must be applied to whatever we do right now. Let's say you want to write a book, a common example I know, but this one everyone understands. That's too overwhelming to think about. Let's divide that into different chapters. Okay, now let's divide it again into tinier pieces. Now what can we do right now? On a daily basis you can write 100 words. That's reasonable. You can try to think of the different chapter names, you can make the cover, you can write an introduction. These are all things you can do right now, and over time focusing on the process will result in something big. After a year of 100 words a day results in 36,500 words written. That is a good result already. So to whatever you do right now, focusing on the end won't help. You just want to know approximately where you want to go. It's focusing on the present moment, on the task at hand, that will help you make your progress. I know how pleasurable it is to fantasize about the future, but it doesn't add up to our lives. It may give us some motivation, and it certainly does make us lose valuable time. New startups never launch with a perfectly finished business. What they do instead is launch a basic version of the finished product to see how the public reacts. If it works, great, let's launch the full product. If it doesn't work, on the other hand, fine, let's move on to something else. In the case that it didn't work, the company didn't invest all its resources in one thing that didn't even work, and they can remove things the public doesn't like and add things the public will like. This way of doing gives the startup feedback. This defeat is nothing else than education for them. The same principle can be applied in our own lives.
You should try it sometime.
Abraham Lincoln, with his penchant for jokes and body humor, was suffering from crippling depression for nearly his entire life. Not appreciated as a medical condition at the time, he thought that this was in some way destined for him and that this unique experience prepared him for greater things. He was able to endure this pain and even find benefit and meaning from it. For most of his political career, slavery was a dark cloud that hung over the whole nation, that he had to get rid of. Fortunately, the qualities that Lincoln produced through his personal journey was exactly what was needed to get rid of that cloud. Unlike other politicians, he was not tempted to lose himself in petty conflicts and distractions. He could not hurt others because of his own experience with suffering. He was patient and could find purpose and relief in a cause bigger than himself and his personal problems. As smart and ambitious as he was, his real strength was his will, which helped him lead the nation through the Civil War. Thanks to his will, he was able to not give in to hopelessness. He could use his own private turmoil to teach and help others, and he was even able to see politics philosophically. As he often said, this too shall pass, and was applicable in any situation. In life, action will not always be enough. Some obstacles are just beyond our control, and we just have to hope. These obstacles are possible to overcome, but we should be ready for them not to. This is will, the power within us to find purpose and meaning in even the worst situations. It's our inner power, our inner fortress, that allows us to endure obstacles we simply cannot overcome. Doctors and many other disciplines have something called a post-mortem. This is a practice where doctors examine the causes of a patient's unaccepted death to learn from it and improve the next time similar circumstances happen. Outside the medical world it has different names, but in the end it's the same thing. We're examining something after it happened. On the other hand is something called a pre-mortem. This is where you envision what could go wrong and what will go wrong before it happens. Many projects fail for preventable reasons. They failed because they didn't predict the worst case scenario. And it doesn't mean you have to start seeing everything in your life as bad and that everything you will try will fail. It just means that you have to keep in mind that things could go wrong and have a backup plan in case it does. What if this happens? Then I'll do this. If that happens, we will change our plans and go this way. And even if there's no plan for the situation, then the only answer is it's gonna suck, but we'll be fine. Too many external factors can contribute to a project failing, and we don't have much control then, but we can still try. If persistence is a month in your life, then perseverance is a whole decade. Persistence is about giving your all to overcome an obstacle. Perseverance, on the other hand, is giving your all to overcome obstacle after obstacles and repeat that process over and over again. It's about approaching obstacles with persistence over and over again in your life. That is true perseverance. Persist and persevere. With that mentality, no obstacle will stop you. When Antonio Pigafetta, who was Magellan's assistant, went on a trip around the world, they asked him to reflect on his boss's most admirable skill. His answer didn't have anything to do with sailing, but it was about his ability to endure extreme hunger. So developing the skill of perseverance will only bring you benefits when it comes to overcoming obstacles. Michel de Montaigne, the French philosopher, nearly died falling from a horse. They thought he was dead until the last moment where he suddenly revived. He felt like his spirit was leaving him only to come back at the last minute. After this experience, Montaigne changed his life. He went on to write popular essays, travel internationally, and serve as a confidante of the king. This is not the first time we see a similar event. Someone nearly dies, miraculously survives, and changes his or her life forever. This happened with him, and he no longer was afraid of death. Fortunately for us, we don't have to nearly die to have this inspiration or this energy to change our lives. We can, as Montaigne said, meditate on our own death. This should not be depressing nor discouraging, but it should bring some purpose and meaning to your life just as it did to Montaigne.
Give meaning to your life.
Sure, he experienced it the hard way, but still. Meditating on your own death should also not be something you stress and be scared about, but something you should keep in mind when you're holding back your true potential. Knowing you will die allows you to start living truly. You might be living your life to a certain degree already, but you know there are some things you're still afraid to do. Keeping your death in mind could help you overcome these fears. This is about having purpose, about acting for the greater good, and being able to go through great suffering because you know you're helping a cause, thinking about others before yourself. James Stockdale was a US Navy fighter pilot. Shot down in North Vietnam in 1965, he contemplated what would happen to him down there. Imprisonment and torture were certainly part of the planning. And once he hit the ground, he stopped contemplating about himself and started thinking about others. He was the highest ranked soldier they captured, so he would be the leader of the other US prisoners. His cause was about unity over self, about the group over the individual, so he didn't ashame them for giving up information after hours of torture, and he supported these hours of torture because of that cause. Just like James, we should have a cause, a purpose, and it doesn't mean that you should force one, because that would only show insecurity, but it's about thinking about what is really important to you and then fighting for it. You don't have to fight for enormous causes like ending world hunger or fighting for the planet, because that is just ridiculous, but any cause really is enough. It's just about caring about something different than yourself. If you help kids get better at a sport, that's great. If you feel like that's what you want to do it. I feel like we only talk about the big causes like this ending world hunger thing and not enough about tinier but just as important causes. Just know that whatever you do that is not all about yourself is a good enough cause. This video was a sort of summary of the book The Obstacle Way by Ryan Holiday. Definitely would recommend it, and if you want to buy it, it's in the description. I hope you have a better idea of how to overcome the obstacles in your life, whether they be physical or mental. You can always subscribe to the channel for similar content. Hope you have a great day. Peace.